Okay, welcome to People Behind Brands podcast with myself, Mark Tuxford. Today we are interviewing Paul Warren, Chief and Founder of Making Websites Better. This is a very special episode because it's our first episode on video, available on YouTube and also on podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So Paul joins us today to discuss MWB and its journey to becoming a website performance agency, his overall career and previous award-winning career in the world of print. And of course, we'll also touch upon those all-important life lessons from the world of business, sometimes emotional because life lessons are always emotional. So Paul, welcome to People Behind Brands podcast. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me. At last.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had it planned, but ultimately we've both found time to get you in the hot seat today. So let's get straight into the question. So I know you started out your career as a graphic designer before moving into the world of print and running your own business. So perhaps first you can take us back to your early days and your journey through building a business and obviously your career today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a long story, unfortunately, because I'm an old guy now. But over 30 years ago, I started my career as a graphic designer. My dad used to work in a printing company in Watford. And I was fascinated going in at the weekends and playing on the Apple Macs. So, mucking around in the swivel chairs as a teenager, but getting a bit of chance to have a go at the Apple Macs and play with the software, I realised actually I was quite creative and able to sort of manipulate the software to create work. And within a few weeks of going in with my dad to these Saturdays, I was able to do commercial work. And by the time I was about 14 years old, I was doing freelance work. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was doing, looking at setting up an agency. By the time I was 16, I had set up an agency and I was doing a bit of work before I left school. And I didn't do so well at school. So, I don't yet know, but I think I'm ADHD and I'm very much have a definitely a problem with attention. And school wasn't for me, but having that creativity, having that focus to, play with amazing software and amazing hardware gave me that sort of spark to find what I was good at. I had a career. I went to college. I did a HND in print and design. Took my first job as an apprentice within a printing business. And the great thing about that was I was so passionate about being a designer. I wanted to be creative, but 4 days a week, they'd have me doing something else in the business. So I'd be working on the counter, serving customers. I'd be going out doing sales. I'd be going out as a paired delivery driver. I'd be running printing machinery. I'd be doing all sorts. And it was fantastic to give that grounding in all the areas. And the other thing it did was it created that level of empathy at a really young age of your colleagues. So when they finally said to me when I was about 17, 18, you're definitely good enough to run the studio now, sort of go upstairs to the studio and run the design team, I'd had empathy for my colleagues and their challenges of how they produce their work and how they deal with customers and how they deal with all the facets of the business. It was just a phenomenal grounding.
So when you talk about your early career and obviously being at school and moving into your early career, did you always kind of know what you wanted to do?
Yes, and I think that's from the Saturdays popping in with my dad. It's, instead of going to football one week, it would be the next week going into work with him and things like that, and seeing that firsthand. And I most people I know in my long career now, it feels anyway, that have not known what they want to do, haven't ever found any passion, haven't found that drive. So I was really lucky to found I wanted to work in a creative industry, at least a communication sector from a young age.
And then obviously going into the early part of your journey in business, what's the financial side been like? Obviously, you're having to fund that yourself and ultimately, getting new team members come in and building your business. So what's that been like for yourself?
Well, if anyone ever says start a business to get rich or have a good work-life balance, they're an idiot. That doesn't exist. And anyone that's ever successful is always more fascinated by failure and challenges than they are by, the successes that go on. And there's huge financial risk, huge multitude of other challenges of running a business. And when I started my first business in the early 2000s was a printing company. I started out with my own money as a graphic designer predominantly, and I was outsourcing the print. But then one of my customers approached me and said that, we're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on printed goods. Why don't we start a business together? So it became a print company. So I took investment into that business. But what a time that was. So it was August 2008 when they'd invested. the parent business, the investment company, went into administration within 1 month of investing into my business. 1 week after that, there was a global economic crash, and no one cared about marketing in 2008. No one cared about sales. So marketing and recruitment just died in the whole of the UK. And then within 1 week of that, our factory in Radlett in St Albans actually flooded. So the shutters had let in enough water overnight that half of our print equipment that I had personal guarantees on and finance was 1.5 meters underwater. And all the staff had come to work looking at me as a bloke in my 20s going, what do we do? How are we going to survive this? How am I going to have a job on Tuesday? It's a Monday. We've lost our investor. We've got no customers. Our building is underwater. What do we do? And the truth is, I actually couldn't close the company because I'd personally guaranteed everything. Probably would have done. But the weird thing is the journey of not having the option to close the business created that resilience. And we had paper, we had people, and we knew there were businesses in the area. And obviously not many of them were spending money on print at that time. But we printed our own flyers and we identified businesses we wanted to work with. And none of us that were sales guys, I was a graphic designer, I employed another graphic designer and some people to work in the print factory. None of us were designers, were salespeople. And we went out and walked the streets and we went and knocked on doors and we told people our plight. We told people our true story. I suppose that was a weird thing. It's the first taste of what was now personal branding, is the people trusting you because you're being honest. People saying, well, the poor guy, he hasn't got a leg to stand on in this climate. No customers, no investors gone under, you owe them money. You've got machines that are underwater and you owe the money for them to be taken out of the building.
How do you deal with that pressure though? Because obviously that's a lot of things that have happened in that time. And obviously you've got people's wages to pay and all that sort of stuff. So how do you deal with that?
I don't know where it comes from, but it didn't faze me then and it doesn't faze me now. In business, you can be at a point where you're a week away from paying a really critical bill in your business. And I think some people panic and flap and worry about the mechanics of it too much. And I feel that I tend to just be able to make quick decisions. I'm not saying that's like any form of natural entrepreneur, but I think there's a natural resilience.
So talk to us about MWB making websites better. So, you've had your print background, moving into what is websites at the time, which is very much websites. I know we're digital performance as well, but at that time, 2019, it was very much website focused. So what made you want to go into the sort of the website area? Well,
after the print business, I was doing a bit of consultancy, helping printers succeed online, helping printers do better in terms of their sales and marketing. But it just felt there was a gap in the market for a truly honest, sounds cheesy as you can imagine, but a truly honest website agency, someone that wasn't going to make people feel like it was going to a mechanics. And, like always a lady pulled up on the driveway with a BMW, we're going to have our day here, we're going to get the top fee, the feeling of going to a mechanic and that awkwardness of, I don't know what I'm buying, so I'll just say yes and pay the bill when they get the card machine out. And there was room for an agency to be truly honest. And I'm not saying all agencies are dishonest, my feelings on that. But we wanted to be truthfully open and honest with our clients. And our values from day one have been passion, smart thinking, empathy, and telling the truth. Because telling the truth is a proactive action as opposed to reactive, which is, we didn't quite get the client to page 1, for example, this month, or we didn't quite optimize this campaign. We've been caught out. We better now be honest. Yeah. Honest is reactionary. Yeah. And truth telling from day one has been our culture, as you know.
Yeah. And obviously now introducing the kind of website performance angle to it, so through digital marketing strategies and digital performance, what made you want to sort of go from just being a website agency to then being a digital agency?
I mean, I would say this, but I feel like we're one of the best website agencies in the UK. So we build great, attractive websites, but what's the point if no one's visiting them? And many of our clients were perhaps confused by the website area, but even more confused and felt overwhelmed with going to the wrong agency. Hiring the wrong agency is extremely expensive. A bit like the analogy of hiring the wrong staff members is expensive, but I think hiring the wrong agency is even more expensive. So the digital element came in just again with our ethics to try and improve performance for our clients.
In terms of a USP, because obviously our industry's not regulated, it's quite competitive and stuff like that. So what is MWB's USP, do you think?
I think the values, number one, the values I mentioned earlier, but also our process. So we've developed a process called TRACK to understand the target audience, how you reach them, engage with them, convert them and keep them. And yes, it's just a process. It's just, someone could say you're just following your cookie code. It's far from that. We're customizing this strategy to help our customers succeed online. And it keeps us in check, more than it does the client. It keeps us in check to work to our process and our values.
So Thinking about sort of sister brands, sub brands, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, people behind brands is a product of making websites better. So, we're obviously taking this from podcasts to live events now, and it's it's essentially a movement. It's a community that we're building here. So, one of those being that we had our recent event at Colchester. So, just talk to us a little bit about the idea behind the brand and ultimately why you're so passionate about it.
Well, number one, it was to back you. I believed in you from the day I met you, and I told you that. But I feel like you wanted to launch a podcast, and I wanted us to have a voice to help small businesses and help individuals, whether they work in a large corporate or they're a one-man band, get their story out there authentically, and for people to listen to stories that are not bullshit. Excuse my language. Like it is hard running a business. It's nearly impossible to succeed. I don't remember the numbers, but it's something crazy percent that actually succeed past 5 years. And in this climate right now with everything that's going on in the current economy, probably the hardest time ever to run a business. So the podcast has more of a place now than ever. And so do our events. Because at our events, we had amazing speakers like Dean who won The Apprentice, who you interviewed, through to one-man band businesses that were telling their story on the same stage, networking in the same room, networking in the same crowd. And the podcasts online platform of giving everyone a chance and telling true stories, the no bullshit, this is how hard business is stories, as well as the in-person event was the same, celebrities through to normal business people. It was a great vibe.
So turning our attention now to more about, your time away from the business. I know you don't get a lot of it, but ultimately when you think about working long hours and, having that sort of drive and passion for not just the business, but the industry itself, talk to us about your sort of personal life and what that sort of consists of. Obviously, your wife, your kids, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I've got an amazing wife. We met actually at the same time that I started the print business. So she's watched this journey, my whole career of a print company through to this web business, and she supported me the whole way. And one story I want to say about this is with regards to her support, as you don't know someone's backing you until they're perhaps vocal about it. And sometimes people aren't always vocal about their emotions or vocal about, I'm here to support you. But there was one award ceremony we went to in the printing industry. It was on a boat on the Thames. And we were up for Digital Printer of the Year, I think it was. And we had quite confident we were going to win it. And my wife didn't express this emotion until we didn't win the award. Someone else's name was called out. And she's sitting next to me and she got really emotional, really teary, really broke down. And she's like, I wish we could leave. I wish we could leave. We were on a boat on the Thames. There's nowhere we can go. If it's a hotel, well, I think we would have left the ceremony, right? But you don't realise the journey she's going through supporting someone that's really struggling basically to grow a business and going through that 100-hour-a-week struggle. And I didn't consider her perspective. What happened to be really strange was 10, 15 minutes after she was really willing to leave, they called out a Lifetime Achievement Award, which they do every 3 or 4 years, which is I think called People in Print Award. And I won that. And it was for my contribution to the industry, and it was for bringing young people into the sector, and it was for supporting the industry and trying to be innovative. And it was weird because when they were reading out the traits of the winner and they hadn't named the person yet, my wife's elbowing me and she's in floods of tears. And you look at it and you think, well, your partner, you don't know what your partner's going through when you're trying to run a business or anything, any occupation. You've taken risks in your occupation. You don't know what your partner's going through. So I think that's an important thing to say, like, as an entrepreneur, that you've got to consider who's around you. Yeah. My kids are fantastic. They've seen the whole journey, obviously. The whole time I've been self-employed. They love coming into the office on Saturdays and when I'm working, it keeps me company and they can play with gadgets and muck around. A bit like my dad did for me 30 years ago.
Mm. So how much of an inspiration are your kids to you? Because I know, knowing you personally, that, you are a fantastic dad, along with wife Kelly as well as a mum. Mm. But, how much of an impact do they really have on you running a business, but also now being dad?
Yeah, it's odd because it's a bit strange because, again, I think it's the not understanding what the wife goes through because I just crack on and work and then never stop working. And she's there to support them. But my kids are amazing. I'm so proud of my son. He just won a work experience at Amazon, as one of our clients, and had a really good time there. He knows what he wants to do. So I'm really proud of him and what he's doing. And my daughter's just a character. So, they're amazing. They keep you anchored.
Yeah. So our podcast is founded upon honesty and how testing times have impacted our personal lives. So away from business, can you tell us about a challenging time that made your life?
Yeah. I think when my sister passed away a few years ago, as you know very well through the charitable work that our business does, I think the business was in a position where we were at death's door as well. So our business was struggling to the point of, I can't believe we're keeping the doors open. And then I get a phone call from my dad saying that, you need to come around, your sister's passed. And it was like that week struggling to raise money for paying bills. And at the same time of that going on, it was absolutely horrendous. And the weird thing is I made 2 phone calls. One was to Ricky, our colleague. And I said, look, can you give me 2-3 days to sort myself out? And he did, and he was amazing. And then the second one was to my accountant and said, look, can you step in and help Ricky for 2-3 days? And then I didn't contact anyone with the business for over a week because I had all the stuff to do with the family. I came back and everyone around me had rallied. And I think the thing is sometimes, what does that teach you? Ask. Going through the hardest time ever, the worst 6 hours of my life or whatever, that feeling like you should go off and deal with your parents and grieving, but yet you're thinking, actually, I've got responsibilities. There's stuff. The business has got to pay bills in a few days. We've got stuff to do. That's awful because it's a baby. It's almost like a child. You can't drop your business. You've got to see it through.
Yeah. So opening up a little bit about your sister's passing and stuff like that, and I know you're an ambassador of the charity that essentially she's been affected by, but how much of an impact, again, has that had on you, your family, someone
Huge.
Very close to you sort of passing away?
Well, I think it's the same as everyone. You don't really appreciate someone until they're gone, right? You don't appreciate a situation until afterwards. And SUDEP now while we support SUDEP Action, sudden and unexpected death due to epilepsy in action, an amazing charity that try and help with prevention of loss of life, as well as helping the bereaved and lobbying the government for best practices, access to medication, etc. I wouldn't have even considered that was a thing. I don't think most people that are linked to epilepsy even know that you can die. I didn't. My sister was perhaps 12 when she found out she was epileptic. I was about 13, 14 years old. So lived all that time until she was in her late 30s. I was in my early 40s, not knowing you could even die from epilepsy. And then she just did, the lights turned off. But I would be, she would go through bad medication spells and have really bad skin outbreaks. And I hate to say this on my brother, right? Even in my 30s, I would take the mick out of her. And you think about it now, and you think, well, what was she going through? She couldn't drive. She couldn't have children. She had to have a career where the work would know all about her position. And she didn't. She was still living at home in her late 30s, and I've gone on and done all these amazing things and tried to build a life for myself and my family, and I've sort of left her behind. And that guilt of when she passed, of thinking, did I do the right thing as a brother? Well, you can't think that way. Unfortunately, I didn't. And I did take the mick out of her in the worst times of my life, but we were there for her and we supported her until the end. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And that's why we now support the charity. And we've done some amazing things. You've jumped out of a plane in her memory. I've done a lot of running and other things. And this year, I think I'm going to do something a little bit more than just the running. We'll talk about that. But it's nice to have that purpose. Yeah. So having that bereavement's now turned into a lifelong purpose.
Yeah.
I think that we can do something to help that charity beyond their natural capabilities.
Yeah, well, it's a nice sort of segue into my next question, which you just touched upon, their purpose. So what is your purpose? What is your why?
I think if I go back to the print company days and after winning that People in Print award, someone asked me in one of the magazines was, why have you employed 22 apprentices in 1 year when you're a 36 staff business? That's crazy. You've employed more people than anyone in our industry that's that age, that 16 to 19-year-old age. And we've got businesses, thousands of staff businesses, and you're micro, and you've done that. And I think it was this feeling of everyone deserves to reach their potential. Cheesy as that sounds, I think, when you meet a young person who's in their teens or perhaps even older, and they don't know what they want to do, it sounds silly. It's sort of a frustration for me because I feel like everyone should have the opportunity to find out what they want to do. So I think that's definitely something that I'm passionate about. I mean, our colleague Ricky's been with me since he graduated from university, and he's amazing. And that's not me, but he's had the platform through our relationship to succeed. And I feel like if business can be about money, of course, but I would never be the person to be in a room and brag about money. I'd be the person to brag about someone my colleagues doing well. And I think that's perhaps my purpose, is helping people reach their potential.
Yeah. So away from the world of work, I know business and OUB and whatever else you're involved in are your passions, really. But your other passion is obviously being a passionate Arsenal fan.
Yes.
So going to many home games and travelling the country during you supporting the Gunners. So talk to us about this area of your life and other interests you get involved with. Yeah,
I mean, I think in the 90s it was more fun being an Arsenal fan than it is now. Well, perhaps not so much now, but actually I think the whole time I've been self-employed, which is about 20 years, it's probably Arsenal probably not been reaching their potential, shall we say? But in the 90s and early 2000s, it was an addiction. To go to football matches where you're 2-0 down at half time and you think it's all right, we're so good, we're going to win. It's even if you're not in the world of sport, I think that feeling of invincibility, I can never replace that. That's a drug I don't think I'll ever experience again. But, Arsenal at periods of my life was so good that they kept me going in my personal life. Whatever was going on outside of football, it was an anchor and a motivation to say, look at what they're doing. Get up and go to work, get up and go to the gym, get up and take the kids to the park. That was a point of motivation.
Yeah. If there's listeners listening that aren't really a football fan or don't really get football, what would you say to them in terms of certainly following your club and how much of an impact or that type of stuff it has on you?
Yeah, hard to answer that, but I think it's anything you enjoy or love. Most people tend to really love something that they participate in. Yeah. This from sport in Ipswich. There's points in your life where you've probably been low, and then your team's brought you up. Or vice versa. To be honest, quite often
a lot more.
It's getting rarer, but I think it's that it's something that you can truly love that can change your outlook on life for that period.
Yeah. Okay, so Paul, take us back to a time that impacted us all from a professional and personal point of view. COVID-19. What did you learn about yourself, perhaps during that time, as well as the business and industry?
I think on a business level, the resilience that I gained from the earlier experience in my career of having a print company that was beyond insolvent, had no hope of surviving, and we managed to drag it out of the mud and ended up becoming a multi-million-pound sort of industry-leading business. The resilience there and the many years since of seeing extreme, unexpected situations. So from a business point of view, for ourselves in that March 2020, I'm thinking now, we went from having a normal pipeline of work and a normal retainers and contracts coming in. And I think at that time we had a couple of really big projects in the agency, and they all went within a week. And that's scary, because you don't understand things like furlough. You don't understand things about how these mechanics work. So same as everybody else, really, extremely scary. But I'd have got the past experience of beyond failure in my mindset to think you can pull through this.
Yeah. I think a lot of people might see COVID-19 as potentially a sort of failing in their business here and there. But, if you were to talk about sort of failure or the word failure or the feeling around it, certainly, how have you dealt with any failings in your life or career today?
Used to think it was a dirty word, right? Like I think most British people do. British people don't talk about failure. It seems like an American thing where American businessmen almost, wear it as a sleeve of a badge or a sleeve of honour that, I've had a couple of Chapter 12s or whatever it is in the States. I've had a couple of businesses that haven't succeeded. And in Britain, it's seen as a dirty word. I've had a couple of business failures in my whole career, right? And not proud of the outcomes, but I was proud of the way that I dealt with them. And I think that every sort of successful person is actually interested in failure, wants to learn from it. In my story, I've met two billionaires in close proximity, had two very short conversations with each of them, and both of them within 3 or 4 minutes of a general chitter chatter have asked about my biggest failure and what I learned from it. And I think that's fascinating. And the fact that successful people are interested in other people's failures means that they're hopefully still in learning mode. And what does that teach you? Wherever you are in your journey, try and embrace failure and learn from it, and do the right thing in those situations.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were to do all of this over again, what would be one life lesson you would give a younger Paul Warren?
Take more shots. And I think that's the one thing we talk about openly and honestly. I'm going to start doing a bit more of in our short-term future, because when we started the agency, I was DMing people that would never reply in your head, turning up to events and asking questions of people that would never listen. But funnily enough, a number of them did. And some of our clients now, we've got some customers and people we work with and have done great work for many, many years off the back of a DM you don't expect to reply to, or asking a question at an event, or hanging around to try and meet somebody at an event. I think, take shots. If you don't take a shot, you're not going to score.
Yeah. So in terms of what you mentioned there, can you give us an example of a shot you took and, maybe you didn't think you'd score?
Yeah, really good one. Good question. There was one example where there was a large holiday park business I wanted to work with without naming them, national brand. Was desperate to work with them, and there was a tender process. So we entered the tender, And being a young person in your 20s, I didn't really read the tender document as well as perhaps you should. Now you've got a bit of grey hair like me. And the tender was 17 times our turnover as a business. So there was no way we were going to win it because they would have had to own our business. So it showed extreme naivety, but they loved what we put in our pitch. They loved our brand and what we were trying to achieve. So they gave us a bit of encouragement in the feedback that there's a one-day opportunity. I didn't want to wait for that one day. So it was coming up to Easter. And we got Thornton's Easter eggs. I got the names on LinkedIn of all the marketing teams, first names, got their names chocolatied onto the Easter eggs, changed the packaging, and then every day, either side of Easter for 8 days, the 4 and 4 days, either side of the bank holiday, dropped off a bunch of Easter eggs in reception, got a few parking tickets along the way for the fact that you can't stop outside, and thought nothing of it. And then within about a week of this, dropping off Easter eggs and bothering this business, we got a landline call as I'm literally pressing the alarm code to leave the building very late at night one night. And this person had said, "Hey, is this the company? Can I speak to you?" And it turned out to be the CEO of this business that said the marketing team are driving me crazy that this creative business has done this campaign and got our attention. They're loving the Easter eggs. Any chance you could be here tomorrow? I'd like to see you. And I went in and we got work and they became our biggest customer. So we didn't win the tender that was 17 times bigger than we were, which was naivety, but the persistence and the creativity won us an amazing client.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that everyone can learn from that and take inspiration. So, yeah. So before we end the episode, let's look at the trivia round for you, Paul. So where we talk about some of your most favourite things in a quick fire round. So are you ready for a quick fire round?
Let's do it.
Okay. So first question, favourite food?
Thai.
Okay. Favourite band or artist from the world of music?
Because of relevance, recently Oasis.
Yeah, because obviously I know Oasis means quite a lot to you. So just talk to us about obviously that concert and why that band means so much.
Well, I went to Nebworth in '96 and don't remember any of it. So it was nice to go and see them at Wembley and be sober this time. So,
favourite TV programme or film?
I tend to like true story stuff. So I like a lot of sort of mobster gangster things. I'm actually, me and the wife are rewatching Sopranos at the moment.
Okay. Favourite place in the world or holiday destination?
Cyprus, which I just came back from last week. I got married in Protaras in Cyprus. It is absolutely beautiful.
Excellent. Favourite ever Arsenal player? I've got to ask this.
Thierry Henry.
Yeah, you can't go wrong, really, can you? No. Favourite famous person?
Thierry Henry.
Favourite household chore?
Nagging the kids to do their chores. That's probably the only input I have.
Yeah. What do you think when you look in the mirror?
God, you're getting old.
And how long do you spend getting ready in the morning?
Never any time. 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
No. 20 minutes.
What would you say inspires you on a daily basis?
Cheesy as it sounds, my colleagues.
Yeah.
I wouldn't carry on with the business during the hard times if it hadn't been for my colleagues.
Yeah. When do you think you last cried?
Oh, on a serious level, I think the bereavement a few years ago, but probably every time Arsenal lost at home.
Yeah. Best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Learn from failure.
And 3 guests you would invite to a dinner party and why?
Cool. Muhammad Ali. Just what a conversation.
Yeah.
Thierry Henry, because just be in awe.
Yeah.
I think my sister.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice that. And finally, other than authenticity, what makes a good person behind their brand?
You've used the word, but it is authenticity. How do you gain trust? It's by being you. No bullshit. No sugarcoating it, and not selling something you don't do, and being authentic.
Yep. Excellent. Well, Paul, it's been a real pleasure to have you on today's episode. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Perhaps you'd like to tell everyone where our listeners can find MWB and anything else you wish to add before we wrap up today.
Yeah, give us a follow at makingwebsitesbetter.com is our website, and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Join us next time for a brand new guest as we go exploring more life lessons from the world of business.